You're listening to The Tide Pod, hosted by your friendly neighborhood PhD.
Hi, everyone. It's time for another edition of the Tide Pod. And today I'm joined by Brad Miller, who is an author and blogger. And he has a recent book that was published called Fighting Towards Victory. And I'm happy to have Brad on to talk about his story and, do some back and forth on some advocacy work that we're doing and go from there. So, yeah, happy to have you, Brad.
Yeah, thank you for having me and should have a good conversation.
Yeah, definitely. So just starting out, if you want to share a little bit about, your background and kind of like, you know, how you got to this point, what's been going on, in your life.
Sure. Yeah, I actually got into blogging and sharing my story after suffering a work-related injury. Unfortunately, it was blamed on the Becker muscular dystrophy. I guess it was
Mhm.
repetitive strain injury. So it led to me starting to share my story. And, again, it started when I was 10 years old when I was diagnosed with Becker's and, just been trying to live through it, adapt to it. And, you know, I guess, it was a big shock when obviously I lost my job and stuff like that. So it was great to be able to somewhat turn it into a positive by sharing my story.
Yeah. Had you thought about sharing, much of it like socially or publicly until that point, or had you always kind of maybe
Um,
not so
no, the only
much?
the only the only time it ever came up was when I recorded a song and that verse I spoke about it. That was back in 2001. So I hadn't talked about it, and it wasn't again until 2009 when I started. And before then, it didn't. I didn't really pay attention to it just because it wasn't a big deal. But when they blamed my injury on that, and it made me start looking and searching for other people living with it.
Right, right. So when they blamed it on that, is that something you feel was accurate, or do you want to just elaborate a little bit more on, kind of how that happened?
It was a little frustrating because it was sort of, when you work with a disability, obviously you don't think you're going to get an injury. You're going to try and get the best suitable job for yourself. And so, you know, you actually learn more things after the experience and stuff and realize that, you know, some of the situations in the workplace, like, broken desks and chairs and computer issues would have, contributed to it more than the muscular dystrophy because but at that time I wasn't willing to fight or do anything about it.
Yeah,
That wasn't the thing. Like when I stopped working, you didn't see TV commercials saying get a lawyer if this happens and that and this. And so I mean Becker may have played a role in it. I mean, sometimes we do reach a point where
right,
the physicalness of the job can, take a toll.
right. But you don't really feel like that was necessarily the main cause, I guess, of that.
Right. It was an easy way for the workers' compensation to try and get out of their responsibility, and then the employer
Right,
what the employer does is they just wait it out and try and do strange things, lose notes and stuff to try and force you out.
right. Extend it out and make it just where it's not worthwhile almost to keep fighting to
Yeah.
that point. Yeah, yeah. Well, what was it like beginning, your path into social media? Did you have a strategy, or did you organically kind of let it evolve and see where it went?
Yeah, there was no real strategy. The thing
Yeah.
is, I just, again, was just looking for other people living with my same condition. And at the time, I couldn't find anyone. So originally, the My Becker Story blog was just going to be one blog post about my work experience or,
Hmm.
something like that. And then
Uh-huh.
I started meeting people around the world, and then it went from there.
Yeah. And did you, once you got online with say Instagram and some of these other platforms, did you right away find quite a few people, or do you found that it kind of evolved and more have just slowly joined the cause, I guess, so to speak?
Well, I'll tell you, when I started, I was, and it was just the timing of social media, like Facebook was sort of just gaining in popularity. And,
Hmm.
I couldn't find any groups about Becker muscular dystrophy. So I started the My Becker Story blog and all that stuff.
Yeah,
And then it just started more and more people, and then
just
other
joined in
people.
and
That's right. And then other people started creating groups. And then now there's a
yeah,
huge, huge support group.
Well, I know that you've been really involved, and we were one of the founders, right, of the Sons of Dystrophy page and everything. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. Do you want to talk a
yeah,
little bit about that and kind of what the mission is there?
sure. It was just, I believe, around the time that the pandemic was starting, and we had a lot of free time, and then Dystrophy Dad and his the other our friend Cognizant Clay
Hmm.
um, just reached out, and we all got together and said, hey, why don't we try and put something together to support the community. We can start by sharing our stories and then start inviting other people. And the growth has been amazing, you know.
Yeah, I for one, since I first got on really heavily on social media a few years ago, I'm surprised at how many different types of MD there are, and how many people have kind of like joined in, and I know that diagnosis has been something that many people have maybe have ongoing, journeys with, trying to figure out what it even is that they're living with. And, myself, I just found out in the last couple of years, my diagnosis was unconfirmed for, you know, 20, 30 years of assuming that it was Duchenne MD. So I'm kind of on that journey myself now, but I found it really, I guess, um, it felt like the community really embraced, all of us with whatever it is that we're dealing with, like neuromuscular wise. It's made a big difference, I feel like.
Yeah, and that's what I really like is like again, I mean, I like to tell other people, I mean, make sure you're supporting others in the community because, we all need it, everyone. I mean, it's definitely helped me a lot with, a bit of confidence. Like sometimes if I'm struggling with anxiety or something, I just think about all the people I know and that all the people that understand, and it sometimes helps me through.
Right, right. That relatability factor, I think, is really great.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, and you're living in Canada, or are you US based? Or I
Yeah,
think it was
Canada.
Canada. Yeah.
Yep.
What has I guess, accessibility experience, if you could just speak on that a little bit, what's it been like there?
Um, Sometimes it can be an issue. Like I had a friend who, again, had an issue with taking transit, and say the elevator breaks down and it stays broken for weeks, and
Mhm.
then they might not know about it. They show up and then they have that problem. So sometimes that's an issue with transit. That's why, it's not that reliable.
Right.
Um, and as far as other issues, once winter comes along, accessibility goes out the window because there's a lack of snow removal. And like I'll give you an example. So out here
Mhm.
they have these bus pads, or the pads where the buses stop. So cement pads that are always cleaned and salted and ready to take people to get off the bus, but the pathways leading up to them are usually all covered in ice. So it sort of defeats the whole purpose of them. But so there's just a lot of things, like especially winter, that people need to reconsider up here and in other parts of
Right.
the states, right?
Right, right. Yeah, I know that anytime there's snow, ice, whatever, that presents a major barrier for, you know, accessibility for sure. And then it seems like there's that oversight, right? Like
Yeah.
they do have the pad salted and ready to go, but then if you can't get to it in the first place, it's sort of a pointless effort. And then
Yeah, because
so
I mean, one thing I'll say is they have all these standards for employment for people with disabilities, but for some reason they miss out the importance of snow removal and making sure the people can actually get to the job.
right, right. I find that to be really common too, that even if they have one box checked on, say they have a push button door, at
Yeah,
the entrance. I mean, if you can't get to the entrance, if the push button's at an angle you can't access even, that, I mean, it's really
yeah,
doesn't really help at all. So, I
right.
definitely understand, that kind of issue. As far as like policy change and things like that, have you kind of seen it evolve at all where it's been an improvement, or is it still, do you feel like just a really long ways to go?
Are you talking about accessibility still, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, see, back in 2010, when I left my job, there wasn't really many standards at all. But, recently I did some research, and there's a lot now protecting people with disabilities than there was before. But the whole thing
Hmm.
still is finding people willing to hire people with disabilities, because still it's a struggle that some face.
Right, right. It definitely is. And then as far as insurance and anything like that, have you experienced, issues with getting any of the accessibility devices or anything like that?
Well, accessibility devices, thankfully, Muscular Dystrophy Canada helps out, and also there's a government program that helps cover the cost. You just have to apply and hopefully get covered for it, and
Yeah.
so that really helps. And I mean, then there's the other story about if someone with a disability sometimes wants to seek out and try and get life insurance, that's going to be difficult, and they sometimes hear and they'll deny you.
Hmm. Right. And then I don't know if you've had that experience, but I've even had a few cases where I, had to appeal for something to try to get it covered, and and then some things are not covered at all. So I end up trying to set up a payment plan even to afford
Right.
out of pocket on for my case, it's a seat elevator, that recently became something that would be covered, but before it
Right.
wasn't. And yeah,
Yeah.
I just had to have it. So um yeah. Well, if you would like, we can go a little bit more into kind of like how you started out and like your diagnosis, when it
Yeah.
occurred and sort of how that's evolved over time.
Sure. Yeah. So, I was pretty much a normal child until all of a sudden that time comes to join the local soccer team and stuff like that, or in
Hmm.
school. So, I mean, I still remember the day for some reason. I think I was only like 5 or 6, where we were playing soccer and I couldn't run from one end to the other of the field. And but even at that age, like as a child, I was creative enough to come up with a plan to sort of stay near the goal. And when the ball came away, the one time I kicked it and it went in. And so, it shows you that even despite my problems, I was creative, and that other kids coming up and right now, I mean, they will find ways to, adjust like I did. And then,
Hmm.
and so the other thing is I suffered a lot of falls, and which was unexplainable. And then my mom was explaining this to a friend that she had at church, and she said, well, my husband's a doctor. Why don't you take him to him? And so once we did that, I was sent off, well, for a muscle biopsy
Hmm.
at a place called Sick Kids Hospital. And after a 2 day stay with all the testing they were doing, and I was more interested. I didn't mind getting stitches. It was a whole different experience for me. But
Yeah.
again, like a week or two, or I might be getting the timing wrong, but after a while, my parents were given the news. I remember they drove down to some office, I believe in Toronto,
Hmm.
and I waited in the waiting room maybe when they went in, and they were given the news that I was diagnosed with Becker muscular dystrophy. And the doctor told them that I'd probably, be in a wheelchair by age 21.
Hmm.
Because, I mean, the doctors, for some reason, always like to, not worst case scenario, but maybe they were just trying to prepare them. But
I
again,
guess trying to make it where they can come to terms with it, or I don't know.
yeah,
It does feel like worst case scenario a lot almost to me.
yeah.
But yeah. Um, yeah, and the biopsy process, what was that like? I know that, many people have gone through that, but I personally, don't know what that experience sort of entails.
Yeah, just being at that age, it was I was actually more happy about missing school and knowing, okay, cool, I'm gonna, you know, and I remember the experience being at the hospital, like it was downtown Toronto, so I'd look out the window, you'd see just buildings. So it
Just
was a whole
city.
new, yeah, just a whole new
Yeah.
experience for a kid from the suburbs. And so I still remember, yeah, like they would, when I had to lay down, they're like, okay, we're gonna give you this, and it was I guess the anesthesia that sort of,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
And,
sort
and
of
that was
knocked
like a
me out.
localized.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe so. And
Yeah.
then but I do remember them, I believe, starting it. It was up here in my arm there where they took it out.
Okay.
And to me, it was just all interesting. So I didn't really think much of it.
At that
See,
age, you're just curious, kind of enjoying the
yeah,
experience. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it wasn't a painful experience, because there was one part, and I don't know if they still do this. Maybe people from the community or older people will know, there
Mm,
was some long needle thing they put into my calf muscles or something that
mm.
was painful. I don't know
And
why they
was
would
that
end
to
up.
take a sample from there as well, or
I
like
don't
what
know
was the
if it was electrodes or whatever they were doing.
interesting?
So because like I don't even know if they do that anymore, or some people might be like, well, what are you talking about? Because
Yeah.
maybe they don't
Yeah.
do it anymore. But and the strangest thing is after that test, the next patient was a young baby.
Oh
So I'm like,
wow.
I could imagine.
like
Yeah.
what that would feel like for them. Yeah.
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 So that's, yeah.
I always had this needle phobia, and
Uh,
I'm still not a huge fan, so anything like that, I was always like,
yeah.
backing away from right away. So, yeah, when I saw there was a saliva sample option now these days, I was like,
Right.
okay, let's see
Yeah.
where that goes.
A lot
But
easier now.
yeah,
Eh?
yeah. Do
Yeah.
you feel like growing up, at a young age, finding out you have Becker's MD, and then growing up, do you find, or do you think that was maybe easier as opposed to someone who gets, a diagnosis much later in life, 20s, 30s? Do you think that that kind of makes a difference in how you adjust or adapt over time?
It might, because I know the people where it takes a long time to get their diagnosis. There's doctors that they'll meet endless doctors that say, well, they're just not trying hard enough, and this and that, and they'll end up pushing their body beyond what they can and what they should. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe in my case, knowing early sort of gave me an answer to why I couldn't run or why I couldn't, jump fences or climb trees and stuff. And so, I mean, it wasn't a big, I mean, I just, for some reason, I just accepted it and found different ways to, have fun.
To move forward. And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. As far as like treatments or anything, did they have anything over the years that's really helped you? I don't know if there's any kind of,
Right.
therapies, medications, anything,
Well, the first thing they usually do with someone when they're diagnosed is the doctors will, even with Becker's, will automatically offer steroid treatment,
right?
which is something I was doing okay. So it was just something we didn't really want to take part in. There, of course, I mean, at a young age, there also your parents are a little bit worried about side effects and stuff. And also, I wasn't doing too bad. So we didn't take
Yeah.
advantage of that or anything. And as far as other treatments, there were like little things we heard about, like taking the Q10 vitamins or something that might help, but it was
Mhm.
nothing major,
Right.
just simple stuff.
Did your doctors, were they optimistic that something would ever be available, or did they just never really, go there? Or was it more just maintenance, I guess?
Yeah, it was just pretty much maintenance because like throughout the years I would go to a special clinic downtown Toronto, get to miss a day of school, which was nice. And
Yeah.
I do all those testings, like the squeezing test and you know, even like the breathing test, and it was just all interesting to me. And
Yeah.
but there was really no mention of a cure or anything. I mean, obviously, I remember the MDA telethon and having some hope there that something would come about.
Right, right. Did you have to do the measurements of like your heel cord flexibility or like grip strength with your hands, that those kind of tests?
Yep, all those little tests that I don't know if I think well, they do have a name for it now, which I've learned recently, but I forget what it's called. But yeah, I mean, even today, like a few years ago, I would be seeing a specialist, and that's what he would do: test my grip strength and
Yeah,
my abilities, just to see how I'm progressing.
right. And do you do any kind of like stretching or trying to keep that range of motion like in your joints and everything?
It's something I should do that I don't, and you know, but as you get older, you learn that the pain that you're having is because maybe you're not stretching and doing what you have to because
Yeah.
you got to just keep those muscles moving.
Yeah, yeah. Have you had any sort of injuries over the years where you've like overstretched or any kind of longer lasting things with that or
Yeah, there's been ones where like if I've done too much, my for some reason there was one time I drove a long time and after that for some reason my hip muscle was hurting and it lasted for 2 weeks. I didn't even think it was ever going to go away, but eventually it did. It's just or you'll pull a muscle or something, it'll hurt for a few weeks. That's pretty much
yeah,
it.
yeah. Well, I know that back when I would do I would have a school therapist in high school and middle school stretch, and that it seemed like never failed that there would be a ligament or joint that would be overstretched, and then it would be a 2-3 week recovery,
Yeah,
and something like that. So
yeah,
yeah, that seems like a pretty common
yeah.
issue that happens with it. I wanted to touch a little on, you were talking about the creativity and when you were playing sports, at the
Mhm.
beginning you would position strategically to make that work. Do you think I would like if you can go into kind of that adaptability or creativity? Do you feel like over the years that's been something that's, I don't know, been kind of a strength or been something that you've built up, skill with over the years?
Yeah, adapting's been a big thing. Like, and I wasn't ashamed at times to have friends that would help me out because like I'd play baseball, but they knew I couldn't run. So I'd get a friend to run for me and then I would go
Mhm.
take the base and do the rest of it. It was just that first run. But yeah, the adapting is just part of it. Like when I used to fall, even in my 20s, I would be walking with my friends and then fall to the ground. And they'd
Yeah.
be walking ahead, not knowing what's going on. They'd turn around and say, "Hey Brad,
Look
what's
back,
going
where'd he
on?"
go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just jokingly just said, "Hey, I'm here just tying my shoe." And, just it's not adapting, but it was just a fun way of
Right.
accepting it and, dealing with it.
Making light of it a little bit at least. Yeah.
Yeah. And some of them probably didn't even know that I actually fell.
Yeah. Or did you find that you had friends that were really receptive and good about handling anything related to the disabilities?
Yeah, usually they were pretty good. I mean, yeah, a lot of my friends were church friends at the time because I went to youth group, which helped me because,
Uh-huh.
school I didn't have too many friends. And for some reason, living in I guess a bigger city, none of my friends from the youth group actually attended my school. So I think it would have been
Oh,
different if
okay.
they did. So
Yeah. That would have been nice, I would think. But
yeah.
do you still follow up with some of them now? Like have they become sort of lifelong friends or have you had to find kind of new groups over time?
Yeah, sometimes it's new groups over time because I moved a lot as a kid and
Mhm.
but I would probably never talk to any of them if Facebook didn't exist because Facebook allows a lot of us to reconnect and from time to time message each other and stuff. And the other thing is a lot of people have moved out of the town, so it's
Yeah.
pretty much it's just whenever you see them online pretty much.
Yeah. Do you have just a few that are just sort of constant in your life now, or is it just, just here and there with the different ones?
Yeah, I have some good friends and a friend that I hang out with a lot here and very, very, understanding of my issues and always even
Yeah.
offers help whenever I need it. And so there are friends that I've met within the last, say, 10 years that we're really good friends now. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that having just a few of those, it seems like it really strengthens things and you don't feel quite so isolated, even if you're
Yeah.
miles and miles apart, so
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. What about, I guess, like dating life and stuff early on? Was that anything that caused you major barriers, or were you able to figure out something that worked well on that front?
As far as dating,
Yeah, or just like meeting
yeah,
people, access to venues,
yeah, it
that
was,
kind of.
see, yeah, when I was in my teens and stuff, I mean, it was weird. I mean, usually when once a girl knew that I had a disability for some reason, it would just be, we'd just be staying friends and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
it was a difficult thing. And I know it's really difficult for a lot of people sometimes. And
Right.
I mean, obviously there were even times where I thought, I'd never meet anybody. And, I mean, for those still trying and looking to date right now, sometimes, out of nowhere, you'll meet someone and not to say if you don't meet someone, life's going to be bad either. But I mean,
Right.
it's tough for everyone.
Right. I think it's kind of a self-acceptance thing in a way too, in my opinion, like once you kind of realize that it's going to take the right person that, is good with that, but it doesn't necessarily define your life success or you as a person,
Right,
it's just something that can organically happen or not,
right.
and you kind of have to be willing to go with that, at this
Yeah.
point. So yeah. Um, what I know that you've recently published your book, what in the last, I think it was last fall, I believe, but
Yeah,
uh,
November 23.
okay, November.
Yeah.
So what sort of, I guess, catalyzed you to write that, and what was your journey like as far as like assembling everything and remembering
Right.
parts that you wanted to share, and what was that whole process like?
Yeah, so what sort of sparked the idea of writing a book is I would constantly get people messaging me, asking me these personal questions and wanting me to go deeper into things. So, I thought, I've already started my blog. I got a lot of content there. Why don't I just, add to it, revamp all of it? And, and it's not like I took my blog and put it in a book. I actually took the time to rewrite everything to add more stories and expand on expand on my experiences. And it was a long journey, a long, frustrating journey because, you know, even though you have those stories, it's just hard to put them all together and figure out chapters and, you
Organize it
know,
all and
oh yeah,
yeah.
because we're like, you know, I'm definitely not a professional writer or anything, nor do I claim to be, but you know, thank you to you know, Amazon and stuff that I could self-publish it myself. And
Yeah.
that's a whole process in itself, which is frustrating, you know, and that was really frustrating. Like there
That's
was a
something
time
I'm
I thought,
terrified over,
yeah,
is the publishing aspect, whether
yeah,
I try to find a publisher or
right.
self-publish. Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare in a way.
Yeah, because I had someone suggest to me, oh, you should send it out to a publisher and do this and do that. But if anyone's written a book before, they'll probably tell you that there's a lot of people that will send you stuff and say, "Hey, pay me $3,000. We'll do your book. We'll advertise."
True.
And they'll go through it and they won't sell a book because these people are just taking advantage of people who want to write a book. So
Right.
that's why I turned to self-publishing.
Yeah.
And
And what was that like? Do you feel like that was still the way to go over trying to get a publisher?
yeah, because there are a lot of people out there writing books, and again, there's a lot of people out there willing to take advantage of those writing books.
Right.
You know, and I had emails from people, oh, pay me 1,400 and I'll do it. And like I'm like, you know what? I'd rather do it myself, figure it out.
And then it's all yours too, right? I mean,
Right.
yeah, it's just 100% authentic, it seems like.
Yeah, and you know, there were times I thought I wasn't going to get the book completed just because of the figuring out the publishing part, figuring out how my cover fits. Like it was weird. It's like all of a sudden, one week the title of Fighting Towards Victory came, and then within a week I was able to successfully publish the book. It was just weird how it all came together. So that's why I'd say anybody writing a book, keep pushing through it. Like I was saying, I was fighting towards victory of accomplishing the book, and I did. And
Yeah.
that's
And
why,
that just came to you as
yeah,
the title. Yeah. And
yeah.
so did you have ideas for a title before, or were you really at the point where you were trying to come up with one when it sort of popped up?
I was struggling for a long time trying to figure out, you know, what the title would be. How, because I
Yeah,
was like, if I say my Becker story, then it's not going to appeal to a wide range of people because they might not know what that is.
true.
And then I was actually one day reading this rap that I wrote. And
Hmm.
for some reason, I said fighting towards victory in it. And I was like, that's an interesting title.
That
Maybe
sort
I
of
should,
fits.
yeah. So, because
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing. I'm just pretty much fighting every day, you know, just to accomplish and get through whatever we got to get through.
Right. Yeah. Even all the little battles, that we all experience day to day with MD, I think are
Yeah.
victories in themselves.
Yeah.
Is there a chapter that you're most proud of, or one that stands out the most in your mind, or do they all carry the same weight for you?
I mean, they're all important to me, but I mean,
Yeah.
maybe the ones that revolve around the bullying I experienced, because I feel like that can show other people that maybe are experiencing bullying that we can survive it, we can get through it to, you know, when those tough moments come, just stick through it because it will eventually be over and you'll be able to move on from these people. And I know, like I've said before on other things, is yes, there are differences today, like social media and other ways that people bully people, but
Right.
just don't pay attention to it and do your best.
Right. And
So yeah,
definitely,
bullying, like,
yeah. And what for anyone going through that, what's sort of the first thing that you would recommend they do to get away from that situation?
the best thing to do is to find a group that you have things in common with and hang out with. It could be a club, it could be a youth group, or just something that gives you a break from, you know, the same old like everyday school thing. Like have you can have different friends. Just like I believe if I didn't have the youth group and didn't have other friends, I don't know where I'd be today, honestly.
Right. So I think that's really good to think about, that it's not only one place that you can meet people or find people that you relate to that way. I think that's, the fact that you were trying multiple different sources and places to go. I think that's a really good point to emphasize. Yeah. Going back to the disability like space in general, um, like what do you think the biggest strength of the MD community is that you've experienced?
I find it's our ability sometimes to work together and support each other because, like, I want to connect with everybody with muscular dystrophy. I don't want, I mean, I know everyone's condition is serious and they
Hmm.
all want to, get together with people they know and people can understand them too. But a lot of us with the different forms of muscular dystrophy definitely understand what we're going through. So the ability to, support each other is the biggest thing.
Right, right. And you think social media that seems to have made such a difference in so many lives, I feel like. Do you think it's going to continue that way? Do you think there are things maybe that would make that experience better?
Well, I find sometimes when it comes to social media, people get more focused on themselves and, and you just got to connect with other people, support each other's stories. And, even that simple little like on someone's post or a comment can make a difference in their day. And, you
Definitely.
know, I see that there's a lot of us that are talented too in writing and using social media. So, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I was also going to ask you, what do you think the biggest unmet need is as far as people with muscular dystrophy? Like, what can you basically consolidate it into one thing that you think is unmet, or do you feel like it's just like a range of issues that still need to be addressed?
yeah, I think it's a range of issues that a lot of the charities, in the UK and Canada and the States are trying to address.
Yeah.
You know, it's just we need to feel supported. I guess that's the biggest thing, and in the charities and everyone need to, make sure that they're supporting every community, and that's why I like it when I see some of the charities are sharing people's personal stories and
Hmm.
stuff like that. So, I mean, if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
love the ones that are actually focused on, sharing our stories and kind of bringing the uniqueness in, because
yeah,
it's not just a diagnosis or a statistic, like we're each have our own background and story. And,
yeah.
I think that's really cool. And that's highlighted. Uh, yeah. As far as going forward, like, do you see another book in your future? Do you see, like, where are you kind of, do you have goals or sights on, kind of where you want to go next with everything?
Yeah, I mean, I guess with the book thing is, I don't think I was going to write a new book, but the other day I was actually just for some reason looking through my book and I found a little error that was in there, and so out of the 150 people who have bought a book, nobody pointed that out to me that I shared the same story twice in the very next chapter. So what I did is I just tried to correct that part by adding in a new story, and then all of a sudden I started writing and adding more stories to it. So I've added more stories and you know polished up a little bit of the stuff I've written already, and so I am
Yeah.
actually in the process of uploading that, and so it'll be under the same book. It's not going to be a new release or anything, but I'm just updating the book to feature all that. And one thing I was going to say is for the people who've already purchased my book, because there's a new update that
Mm.
I guess we can give them till March 1st to where I can, if anyone wants to, they can just email me, let me know, and I can, send them a PDF of the update just so they can have that for free.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I know, me being a reader of it, I'm looking forward to the new stories for sure. I think that'd be
Yeah.
great. What was that like, the revision process? Is it very difficult to do that?
Um, well, you know what? For some reason, after I wrote the book, I always had these stories like, oh man, I should have shared that one and or this one. And
Yeah.
so I was, the updates are pretty easy because you can just,
Mhm.
make your updates and upload them. It's
So
just
it
when
just
you have to,
automatically will, I
yeah,
guess, publish the new content.
right. And so the only other problem I run into is getting the cover to fit properly, which is a pain. But as far as the writing, once I start writing, once I'm in the mood, once I have that flowing with me, I just
Yeah.
can't stop. So it's been a lot of
Yeah.
late nights and stuff. So
So you just kind of wait till, like, when you feel that energy to write and get it on paper, and then you just go with it. And yeah.
yeah, because I mean, one of my faults is being a perfectionist. So sometimes when something's done, I'll go back and try and fix it. And
Right.
I'm not gonna change this book again. The update that's coming maybe within the next day or two is going to be a final one.
Yeah.
As far as writing any future books, I'm not too sure what I would write about, but anything's possible.
More stories that happen over time, maybe, would make it, but yeah.
Yeah, and
Um,
I'm willing to get into podcasting too, possibly, or just doing something to benefit the community, maybe address the biggest issue that affects me, which is, inaccessibility. So I want to sort of shed light on the issues that affect a lot of people.
right, right. And so you would be essentially looking to be a host of your own podcast in the future, maybe, or something.
Yeah, and I have a friend that had some issues who is would be joining me as well, and he can share his story because, again, while some of us grow up with a disability, sometimes it can come out of nowhere from someone. It could, just result from something else. So it's good to know everyone's experience, especially
Yeah,
those who
definitely.
maybe get that later in life.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great, to see you all start doing that in the future. That's,
Yeah.
podcasting is something I've just started out doing, and I'm finding it more and more, beneficial in a lot of different ways,
Mhm.
despite, kind of the different things with video editing and,
Oh, yeah.
then like being OCD with my voice and the way I, host and everything. So that's a whole nother series of things to learn, it seems like.
Yeah, and that's a good thing because like people should know that we're not doing podcasts and other things or sharing our stories to try and become famous or anything. Is
Right.
we just have a passion for connecting with other people and actually raising awareness and showing people that they can pursue whatever they like to in life.
Right. I totally agree with that. I think that regardless of disability, we still have that human being element, I think, that all of us share. So
Yeah,
I think that's something that, so many of us definitely are highlighting too for people to see. So I really,
yeah,
as a member of the community, I really appreciate that for sure.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
yeah. And
I appreciate
kind
everybody
of,
for doing that.
yeah,
There's a
yeah,
lot of people doing
definitely.
it nowadays, so that's great.
Yeah. But before we sign off, and I'll definitely put, your information on the book and everything out there for people to access. But how do they find you or connect to you if, they want to learn more or follow your content?
Yeah, so on Instagram, it's at my Becker Story, or the blog page, which is mybeckerstory.blogspot.com. And just other social medias. I try and get on everything because I'm trying to just raise awareness with everyone. And so yeah, and so just the books on Amazon. Just look for Fighting Towards Victory.
Great. That sounds great, Brad. Well, I sure appreciate it. Maybe we can have a follow-up episode or something in
Yeah,
the future, but
sure.
I sure appreciate you taking the time and everything.
Oh yeah, and thank you for all you're doing, all your awareness, and you're very active. So I really enjoy your content as well.
Thanks. And that means a lot. Like, I
Yeah,
appreciate it, Brad. And I'll be talking to you